launch a cross-channel invasion. I need you to take pressure off of me in the Soviet Union. And the Western Allies told him, well, we're not really ready for that. We don't have the manpower. We don't have the materials. We're just not ready. If we try to launch this now, it's just going to fail. It takes us till 1944 to get to a point where we say, now we're ready for the invasion. It's taken roughly 3 years to mass all the manpower and supplies, all in Great Britain, getting ready to cross the English Channel and invade Fortress Europe. Now remember, who's in charge of this? Who's making the call on the D-Day invasion? Eisenhower's in charge. Good. Eisenhower says, we're going to go, but everything has to work in concert. Everything has to be done one piece at a time. First wave's the paratroopers. How'd the first wave go? How so, Rick? You said, sure. A lot of them dropped way off course. We don't know what happened. Some were dropped in the right spot, though. So was it successful? There's some goods about it. But if you need everything working together, phase 1 has not gone very well. We're still going to go ahead and send the invasion. Now remember, this is the biggest amphibious invasion in the history of mankind. We're going to cross the English Channel, maybe the most unforgiving waterway in the world. Thousands of men all going at once, and we have one shot at this. We have to get it right, because if we fail, we probably can't do this again for another 3 years. It would take that long to mass all the troops and supplies in Great Britain again. And who knows if we have that kind of time. This is one shot, and we are putting all our chips in the middle. Step 1, the paratroopers, has not gone very well. But we're still going to storm the beaches anyway. Step 2 is send in the landing craft. Now the Brits and the Canadians have their beaches that they're responsible for. They're responsible for 3 of them. They're going to get Juno, Sword, and Gold beaches. That's their responsibility. Now you have to kind of understand something about the way these amphibious landings work. When you land, the only way you can go is forward. Because if you start getting pushed back, you're going to drown. So you better move forward. But we're going up against Hitler's Atlantic Wall. Remember, he built up defenses in northern France because he knew the invasion was coming. It was going to happen. It's just a matter of when and how. But there's someone else that's going to help him build these defenses. Do you remember, who was that general that Hitler just really trusted? It's Desert Fox, you're right. Who is it? Rommel's the one. When Rommel gets to Normandy, he says, if we're going to repel an invasion, we need to build this up even more. We need more defenses. Now, I'm going to show you some examples of this in just a little bit here, but I want to kind of compare and contrast. The Brits and the Canadians get their 3 beaches. And they face fairly light resistance for one reason and really one reason only. Do you remember? June 6th is a really important date for someone else, too. Do you remember what else happens on June 6th? Remember what it was? Say it one more time, Mark. It's Rommel's wife's birthday. When the invasion comes, he's not even there. He's in Germany. Now, I use this as an example because the way that the German chain of command works is it's very strict and very stringent. It's Hitler at the top, and then basically Rommel underneath him. And if they're not able to make a decision, no one else has the power to do it. So here we have Rommel, the one who's supposed to be making the decisions. He's not there. He's in Germany. When the invasion comes, had Rommel been there, he simply would have rolled the tanks in. Now, long story short, the tanks are pulled inland a few hundred miles. He rolls the tanks in, you're pushing the Allies back in the sea. That's a guarantee. Because he's not there to make this call, no one can. So they just watch this happen. Now, I want to probably ask, What happens if someone just made a decision and the decision's wrong? What do you think happens to that person? They disappear. So without Rommel, no one's there to make a decision. Now, this is going to be a little bit different than what we see on the American beaches. We're responsible for two. We get Utah and Omaha Beach. These are two of the most heavily defended areas in the entire world. The resistance we're going to see on Utah and Omaha is hard to even wrap your minds around. Because what Rommel and Hitler created is something that is so defendable, that's so dug in, it's almost impossible to try to take a beach like this. We're going to have massive casualties. I was telling you guys last week that when Eisenhower designed this, he said probably about 50%. It's a coin flip if you're going to even survive. And that's really kind of his scenario that he put on the books where he said this is probably going to happen. Some of his scenarios were upwards at 80% casualty rates. Huge numbers. As when these men land on the beaches, they have a 1,000-foot-long kill zone that they have to avoid. Now, I'm going to show you again, kind of going forward here, what this entails. But I need to explain. When they designed the landing, what Eisenhower knew was, we're going to have to wait. We need to work with the tides as well. We can only launch this invasion when the tide is out. Because if we wait for the tide to come in, we have other issues we'd have to deal with. So we got to wait. We have to really make it so that these men have a 1,000-foot-long beach they have to cover before they even get to fighting the Germans. This is a really rough position in which to be. So I want to show you just a few examples here. I want to first show you what the landing craft looks like. Now, this is just an example of one of these landing crafts. There are literally hundreds of these things, because each landing craft can hold about, if they're packed in tightly, can hold about 30 men. It's this that you take across the English Channel. 20-foot swells in this. Now, some of these things aren't even going to make it. They're going to be sunk and they're going to drown before they even get to the beach. But if you make it to the beach, what happens next is the front of this landing craft just falls down like a drawbridge. Now, this is not some kind of high-tech machinery here. It's pretty simplistic. And the German machine gunners are well aware of what's going to happen. When this thing falls, those machine gunners are trained. Aim for that door. Because as soon as it falls, you have 30 men packed in here. There are countless stories of an entire landing craft just being mowed down before they even get out. The machine gun that they're going to use is so fast. Well, actually, let me hold off on that story for a little bit. I want to show you something else. These things right here are also defenses. Now, this is called a hedgehog. What it's designed to do is basically just grab a landing craft should it go over it. This is why they have to wait for the tide to be out. This is the tide being out. When the tide's in, water covers these. So you can't really see them until the landing craft is just grabbed. Once it's grabbed, it's a sitting duck. So you have to wait for the tide to be out. Now again, same thing. I know this is kind of hard to see, but this is what the beach looks like with the tide out. Now I do want to show you this. This is a new kind of machine gun that's been perfected. Now we talked about the machine guns during World War I and how they would just mow people down. This one is about 6 times faster than the World War I machine guns. They can launch about 1,600 bullets per minute. It's so fast, you can't hear individual shots. It sounds like cloth tearing. Just zzz, zzz, zzz. That's how fast this thing is. There's not just one machine gun at these beaches. There's dozens and dozens of them. But we go anyway. It's going into the jaws of death. And you don't have any options. There's nowhere else to go. You gotta go forward. If you're gonna survive, push forward. We're gonna hold all 5 beaches. And what Eisenhower said is, if we can get 4 out of 5, that's a massive success. It's probably not enough. We need all 5. We're going to hold all 5 beaches, and now we have a foothold. Now we've broken the Atlantic Wall. Now let me go ahead and ask real fast here. We now control this tiny amount of France. We're going to have to ship in a huge amount of supplies and manpower. But if we can do it and we can get out of the foothold, we're going to get France back in the war, even though they're just French. However, we're going to bring them back. What we're going to do is we're going to march on Paris. We're going to march on Paris and liberate Paris in 2 months. Now, I kind of need to point this out because I've had this question in the past. So all you had to do was land here and Paris falls in 2 months? Yes. Reason why is because Hitler and the Nazis put so much investment to repel the invasion that really all of France is not really heavily occupied. There's not a huge, overwhelming amount of German troops in France itself. They're going to be here in the landing area. If you can get past that, then yeah, France is going to fall fairly quickly. Within 2 months, Paris is liberated. Now we have the French back in the war. Now it's time to move on Germany. Now let's kind of begin, sort of play this out here. We've got the Brits, we've got the Americans, we've got the Canadians, not huge numbers, but we do have them. And now we have the French pushing back. What's going on over in the Soviet Union? Are they pushing back as well? What has Hitler created here? What does he have on his hands? Two-front war. What he wanted to avoid more than anything has now come to his doorstep. He's fighting in the West and fighting in the East as D-Day proves to be the turning point of this war in the West. Like I say, had we failed, we couldn't have tried this again for probably another 3 years, if at all. It has to succeed, and it does succeed. Now Hitler's starting to feel the effects of he's getting squeezed from both sides. Now, during this point in the war, Hitler's doing some things that even like his inner circle finds to be very bizarre. First off, Hitler probably dodged about 7 assassination attempts. The most recent one was real close to getting him. He almost died in a bunker explosion. But he survives. Probably what's going on here, we're not certain because you'll never really know. But Hitler had, for a long time before this, he had stomach ailments. He had real serious issues with basically gas, to be perfectly honest. And his personal physician said, I can take care of that. I can fix it. I'm just going to inject you with mercury. Which is bad, yes. That's very, very poisonous. So it's probably, and again, you're not certain, it's probably eating away at his brain. Because the things that Hitler's doing at this point are really kind of signs of insanity. Now, I say that because what we're going to talk about for the last bit of this is we're going to talk about Hitler's response to what's going on in the East and now what's going on in the West. What Hitler says to his generals is, we're going to stop the advance in the West. We're going to throw everything we have against the Western Allies. We're going to make one big push to stop the bleeding. Even Hitler's generals that have been with him since the beginning are starting to say, I don't think that's a good idea. I don't think you have a lot of success. I think it's too big of a gamble. What do you think happens to them? Disappear. Just gone. Hitler's going to make one last big push to stop the Western Allies. He's going to throw everything he has at what's called the Battle of the Bulge. In the winter of 1944 into 45, so December of 44, January of 45, what Hitler believes is, if we can just smash the Allied lines, if we can just break through, then we can envelop them and I will kind of wait to explain this for a little bit.